This episode of the podcast features the dynamic and multi-talented author, theologist, and community Dharma leader, Pamela Ayo Yetunde. We learn about Ayo's early roots in the church, how music and poetry helped shape her work in hospice, and so much more. Ayo is a steadfast organizer and supporter of Black Buddhist activity in America, as highlighted by the Black and Buddhist book she co-edited and summit she co-hosted. Her latest efforts revolve around Theolyricology, the study of song lyrics about God, God's spirituality, and/or the divine. This lively discussion paints the story of Ayo's life with broad brushstrokes, from childhood to this very moment. I'm your host, Ivan Burkholtz. So, Ayo, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I just want to launch right in, and I want to start with something a little more fun and just ask you if there's anything that you're really into right now, a song or a movie or anything that's just like capturing your attention right now that you're a little bit obsessed with, that's just like at the top of your consciousness.
Yeah, Ivan, thank you so much for inviting me into this conversation.
Thank you for joining.
With a lot of things. The thing that I'm most obsessed with, that's bringing me the most joy, I can't talk about it completely because that would be giving a secret away.
Okay.
And I have this thing about not revealing too much of my work until I feel like it's ready. But I will say that it has to do with the application of music written and performed by India Arie for our psychological well-being.
Wow. I'm looking forward to hearing more when there's more to be said.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm listening to her music a lot.
Okay. I haven't listened to India Arie in a long time, but I'm a big fan from, 15 years ago or whenever I first heard her.
Yeah.
She's an amazing artist.
She is. And when you take her music as a whole, you get the idea, that her first hit video, I'm Not the Girl who you see on the video and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But when you take her work as a whole, then you realize that she is also a woman of deep spiritual um, commitments, that basically you could take her music as a whole as a psalm and as a balm.
Yeah.
Especially in these times.
Well, I'm excited. That's a good little drop of information with more to come. Yeah. So in this podcast, I want to go into a little bit of your early life and then follow the trajectory of what led you to be who you are now in the work that you do. So just to set the scene for that, can you tell me a little bit about where you're from and the household you grew up in, place, time, and the culture of your early life?
Yeah. Well, I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. I was born in 1961 to a Christian mother and father, and I have a brother who's 3 years younger than I am. We have we grew up in a working class family. My parents were not college educated. My father was in the Army. My mother worked for the Army as a civilian. And yes, and we moved their first home, which actually was the last home. The first home was purchased at nearly the near end of White Flight on the east side of Indianapolis. So our next door neighbors were the last white family to leave that neighborhood. And we lived next door to each other for years before they retired. They said, "We're staying. This is our home, and we have our plan in Florida. And when it's time for us to go, that's where we're going. We don't need to go to the other side of Indianapolis to escape Black people moving in." And so I learned a lot from living next door to them about how we can coexist with one another.
Yeah, amazing. And you mentioned that you were raised in a Christian household. What role did that play in your life? Was it something that you embraced as a child, resented, a little bit of both? Like, what was your relationship with that, and how it was introduced to you, and how did that influence you as a young person?
Yeah. It's almost like if you ask a fish what was it like to grow up in water?
Yeah.
They're probably like, without it, I probably would not be alive today."
Uh-huh.
Wise, it's not like, my parents said, "Hey, would you like to practice Christianity
Yeah.
for another
Yeah.
reason?" No, it's just part of it. It's part of
Mm,
life, so I didn't resent it. I didn't resent the church. I didn't resent, the beliefs that were taught to me, nor, um, going to church. I began to be a little resentful when my mother told me that I had to serve the church. Like,
mm,
it's not enough to just go and absorb the teachings, you actually have to,
yeah.
serve it and to
Right.
find one ministry, in which I could serve. So, eventually, I did join the Youth Fellowship, United Methodist Youth Fellowship, where actually I learned a lot about leadership, through participating. And then when I was 16, that's when I began to really question. I should say, let me back up and say, where I had the opportunity to observe more the difference between people's behaviors and what was being preached. And that's when I began to question, the efficacy of these teachings.
Right. Um, I'm curious to just know a little bit about your your youth and a non-spiritual teacher outside of the church and outside of your family. If there's anyone that like stands out in your memory, like a schoolroom teacher, a camp counselor, or just somebody in the neighborhood that like really made an impact on how you thought as a young person and how you perceived the world, and just somebody that really impacted your life and your view of things.
Hmm. Yeah. A lot of people. The people who are coming to mind right now are my mother, her mother, and her mother's two sisters. Um, which they had two brothers who were United Methodist pastors. So, there was no negotiating. This is
Yeah, that was the world.
part of the United Methodist Church, and
Yeah.
they were so hospitable and so loving. Um, always had people over, feeding people, humming hymns. I remember constant sound of hymns being hummed in the house. Um, but then when I think about people outside of my family, I think about one of the pastors, Reverend Jerry Hyde, who, when I asked him what he wanted me to call him, he said, "Call me by my first name, Jerry." And nobody back then, children did not address adults by their
Yeah.
name. And so
Yeah.
that's, unusual, and I'm sure my mother wouldn't allow it if she if she heard that. But I asked him he did not want me to call him Reverend Hyde. And basically he said, "You can call me that, but God reveres all people.
Mm.
So you call me Jerry, Reverend Hyde, but all people are revered by God." And I just thought that was so amazing and liberating. Um,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, subsequent to that, I mean, that's, within the Black community, most, if not, yeah, maybe many, I'm sorry, many, maybe most of the
Mm.
leaders, in my day, in the Black community were educated in the church somehow. Went from Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, Jesse Jackson. Um, I doubt very seriously you could point to an African American leader that did not have a tie to the church, and to the Gospels and Christian ethics. Outside of Christianity, I would say when I first learned about Gandhi, I was just amazed.
Mm.
I was awestruck, really. How
Yeah.
does one who has or had the privileges that he had say, "I don't want this anymore." Strip nearly all the way down to having barely nothing, yet impacting social change in three countries? India, Africa, the United States through the civil rights movement. So, um, influences from all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
still.
Beautiful. Um, what's something that you remember, a piece of pop culture that you remember from your childhood that really sticks out? Like, is there a song that you remember, or a TV show or something that really sticks out in your mind as being really influential, or just like something like we were talking about at the beginning, just something that really captured your imagination at that time?
Right. Well, I guess you could say I am a consumer of pop culture.
Mm. We all
And
are.
yes, still. And we talked earlier about India, Arie, and kind of my secrecy around that project. But the thing that's not secret is my love for Prince. And
Mm.
so when I was teaching at United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities, we did a Theology of Prince project. And now I have this book out, Dearly Beloved Prince Spirituality and this thing called Life. And even his song, Pop Life, uh, I consider to be very inspirational because in it he's talking about the dangers of living this pop life, trying to fill the emptiness that we
Mm.
have with things that don't matter, things that don't last. Um, and so that you know, I carry the love of Prince and music that I listened to on WTLC, the so-called black station at that time. I carry those with me to this day with a deep appreciation.
Wonderful. Isn't it so funny? Like you were mentioning that Prince talked about the dangers of pop culture, but you learned that through pop culture. It's like if you listen to the messages when there's people who are, you know, speaking truths, no matter what the megaphone is. If you're willing to listen, you can hear these beautiful things, and they can shift your perception, even if you're hearing it through the dangerous, medium that they're warning you about. It's pretty powerful.
Indeed. I didn't know that, there is a practice called music appreciation. Took a music appreciation course in college, largely because I thought I wouldn't have to work hard in this course. Oh, you mean I can just sit and listen and appreciate music? Yeah, and get a
Uh-huh.
grade for that? Sure. But there is a way to listen to your point, there is a way to listen to music. And if you're open to let it move you and change you.
Hmm. Hmm. I was just lamenting with somebody, the fact that now with digital music that we don't listen to albums as much as we used to. We tend to pick up on songs, and then we might listen to, if we're really into an artist, we might listen to their album once, but then we kind of go to the favorite songs. And there was something so powerful about when you had the physical medium, and when you like purchased that, and it was like a big part. It was very intentional, and so you listen to those whole albums. And I was thinking, like, the songs that I remember all of the lyrics to for most of an album, or from when I bought the album, when I bought the cassette tape, the CD, the record, whatever it was. Those are the albums that made the biggest impact on me. And of course songs still do, but the complete work of an artist, their entire album, it's a bit of a different experience now with how we consume it.
Right, it's the construction of the bigger story is often
Yeah.
missed. But now,
Yeah.
uh, I don't wanna, try to age or, age you, but in your lamentation, and I'm lamenting as well, the thing that I lament the most is when we could go to Tower Records.
Mm. I was there with I was
Right?
at Tower
Okay,
Records too.
right? Oh, you've got all these albums and all these complete strangers
Mm.
and exchanging information person to person. "Oh, you gotta try this." "Really?"
Yeah.
Yeah. I miss that. I miss those days.
Yeah.
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 But the
That's
music
true.
still stays. That is astonishing.
Yeah. 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 It is kind of heartening that record stores are having a resurgence, like all of so many towns that didn't have record stores before, it's coming back because people want that experience of, talking about things, the tactile, like looking through the stacks, and not just, an algorithm serving something to you.
Right.
So yeah.
Tell me what you're
Yeah.
passionate about, and I
Yeah,
wanna tell you
exactly.
what I'm passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. um, what's when again in the same period of your life? What's the first book that you remember really shifting your consciousness? Like when you read something that you really remember, um, it making, particularly spiritually. where it shifted your perception a little bit, where it took you out of the line of thinking that you were doing at that time, and made you look at something a little differently. Is there something that stands out that did that?
Yeah, yes, if we don't have a strict definition of what is spiritual.
No, definitely not at all. Yeah.
Okay. Then I would have to say, the first book that I remember that really shook me, like, my sense of self, was Bell Hooks's book, Ain't I a Woman?
Mm.
I grew up in the church, but I also grew up as a female-bodied person and as an African American person, in the '60s and '70s, where we did the combination of those identities and those experiences. Um, you got punished kind of severely if you questioned
Hmm.
many things,
Yeah.
especially if you question it with a mind that was one that could critique systems. So when I first read Bell Hooks' "Ain't I a Woman," this young African American scholar, I had never met anyone like her, who spoke like her, who wrote like her, who gave me permission to think independently and critique systems of oppression. Um, that blew my mind. And also
Yeah.
accept that, uh, I didn't go by Ayo then. Pam, you can do this too, and you need to do it. So that was the
Mm.
first book that blew my mind, and that was probably in '82, '83. I think the book came out in '81, something like that. But I was in college, 1980 to '84.
Okay. Wow. Um, is there in your path as a spiritual person practitioner, is there a person who you that molded your thinking, like outside of reading? Is there a person that, when you were coming into your own mind about things and not just doing what you were told, um, is there somebody that stands out in that experience? A college professor, a spiritual teacher, somebody that helped you find your path in how you see it now?
Mhm.
Someone that like was a kind of a guiding light in your spiritual path, an individual.
Right. Again, if we don't have a
Yeah.
strict definition of what
Yeah.
spirit,
I mean, whatever help, whatever shepherded you on your path. Um, yeah, in whatever it is, and however you define it. It's
okay. Well,
yeah,
in that case, I want to say that I had a major awakening
yeah.
from someone who many probably would not consider a Buddhist, or that the
Mm,
awakening was a Buddhist awakening. But um, when I was in college, I was listening to a lot of music. I was working, especially my last year. I had two jobs. I had two jobs because my mother had cut me off financially. She had cut me off because I was ready to be independent, and
mm-hmm.
she was not ready for that. And she said, "Well, if you want independence, here it is." So I took the independent route, which meant I had two jobs to get through that last year. And during the day, when I would go to class, I would sleep. I would sleep very soundly.
In the
And
class.
in class,
Okay, yeah.
every
Okay.
class. And in my Black history class, my professor, Hal Chase, slammed his hand down on the desk when I was sleeping,
Mm,
embarrassed in front of everyone, said, "You will no longer sleep in this class, and I want to see you after class." So, I saw him in his office, and he asked me what my plans for the future were since I was about to graduate. I told him that I had been accepted into the master's program in sociology, and he shook his head from side to side and said, "Look, if you're sleeping now, you probably shouldn't continue being in school. You've been over institutionalized," a word
mm-hmm.
I've never heard before. "And I think you need to go out and see the world." That conversation set me on the path to leaving Indiana and going to Zimbabwe. For 6 weeks, I came back to Indiana. I said, "I can no longer live in this sheltered existence." That led me later to live in the Netherlands for 2 years. came back to Indiana, and then pretty much started living as an activist, more aware of the social issues
Yeah.
and wanting to have something to say about those issues.
Yeah. Well, that's a major shift. Yeah.
Right.
Huge. um, and then at what point did you encounter Buddhism in this path? Like, what was your first introduction into that world?
Right. Well, I used to say that it was on my 40th birthday when a friend gave me a copy of Thich Nhat Hanh's Touching Peace. But I think what prepared me to receive his writings was when I read 2 years before the Tao Te Ching. I received a copy of the Tao Te Ching from a friend from India. We were colleagues. We were stockbrokers. And he said, "Something you said made me think you'd want to read this." So I thought, Tao Te Ching, I don't know anything about that. I put it on my bookshelf. Then maybe a few months later, at the end of a trading day, I was tired. I said, let me pick up this book. Read the first page, and immediately I could feel a sense of deep peace throughout my entire being. And it prepared me to receive the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh and, and consequently other teachings in Buddhism.
Did you have a personal relationship with Thich Nhat Hanh? Did you meet him and interact at all, or was it entirely through his writings?
Through his writings, through the Sangha, and I attended one retreat where he taught.
Okay.
But I never knew him personally.
Okay. Was there a person in that community that you really connected with and that you see as somewhat as of a mentor on that path?
Yeah. So in terms of mentorship, I have many mentors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right around the same time I was introduced to the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh, I had also been admitted into the Zen Hospice Project.
Mm-hmm.
And also, through my volunteer work with the Zen Hospice Project, I had been introduced to the concept of meditation retreats through Spirit Rock Meditation Center. Um, so a combination of Plum Village, Soto Zen, and Insight were in my mix. And I would say that one of my teachers was and continues to be as a source of inspiration, is Gil Fronsdal. He was one of my teachers for the Sati Center for Buddhist Studies chaplaincy program. I also took a sutta study program with him, and he was my first retreat teacher.
Great. Can you share with me a story of either when you met him or just something that stands out from your experiences and interacting with him? Something that, like, if you think back about what he's offered you in guidance, or just a funny experience of spending time with him, anything that stands out in your mind, a story about.
Yeah, I don't know if funny is the story I'm gonna tell, but I will just say that I I didn't know that many Buddhists at the time, uh, but he struck me as someone who listened very deeply,
Mm,
was very calm, very precise in his thoughts and speech, had and has a wonderful sense of humor, and is embodies kindness. In our year-long program studying Buddhist chaplaincy, there was only one sutta that we were asked to memorize, and it was the Metta Sutta. And Gil has written about the Metta Sutta in various forms. Whenever I choose try to use it in my own writing, I always ask his permission to use his translation of the Metta Sutta, and he always says yes. So
good.
generosity, I would add generosity
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
list of things I appreciate about Gil.
That's wonderful. It's so interesting what makes influences on us. I remember when I met my Buddhist teacher, I actually wasn't interested in Buddhism.
Mm.
I went to visit him. My father brought me to visit this Buddhist teacher, and I was 15 and a skateboarder, and I really didn't have any interest in Buddhism, but just his presence stopped me in my tracks. And seeing how he interacted with space and interacted with people, I wanted to know more. And then, I got into my Buddhist studies just through seeing what deep practice looked like embodied. And
Yes.
then, and then I wanted to go further in understanding, that, we all have our different access point in what we connect with. Some people connect with the teachings, some people connect with, you know, somebody who embodies the teachings and wanting to know more. I'm curious, like in getting to know Gil, was it how he presented the teachings, or it sounds like it was somewhat how he carried it and kind of manifested, that it felt like he was practicing what he preached, so to speak, a little bit.
Absolutely. That 16-year-old part of me that still exists that's looking at,
Uh-huh.
are people practicing what they preach is still part of.
Yeah.
But as I was listening to you, Ivan, I was also thinking about someone who had a very profound impact on me, but
Mm.
was not considered your, traditional Buddhist teacher, and that was the late Eric Poché. Eric was a longtime volunteer coordinator with Zen Hospice Project, and he interviewed me as part of the interview process for volunteers, and I I don't recall him moving the whole hour that we spoke or however long it was. I don't even know if I felt his breath or if he blinked, more than a few times. I was terrified at the end of it. I was terrified, and I thought not only, are they not gonna admit me into this program, he doesn't like me.
Mm.
So, there was just the stillness, um, but they did admit me, and, his, what we I guess you wanna call it his equanimity,
Mm-hmm.
his deep wisdom and skillfulness around being with dying people
Mm.
and their families, was something that was missing in my life. I didn't know how to do that. That's why
Yeah.
want to volunteer. I didn't know how
Yeah.
to be that way, and he taught me how to be that way. And so
Amazing.
I'm really grateful to Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you, when you were a part of the Zen Hospice program, were you actively working with people through the dying process, or were you more training in the without breaking any protocol with that? Can can you tell me a little bit about that experience and how it's shaped, because I know you've done a lot of work in that realm since.
Yes.
And I'm just curious how that early experience, obviously you you said that you didn't know anything about it and were drawn into it because of, um, you know, whatever it was, the quality of how they were working with that. Can you share just a little bit about your experience in doing that work that has kind of kept you going in it?
Yeah, yeah, wow. Well, let me see. How can I share this in a short way? I can't really. I'll just put it this way. So I told you I grew up in a Christian family, but when I was 30 years old, one of my cousins was dying of AIDS, and he wanted relatives to visit, and many did not, and it just it astonished me, astounded me, shocked me, maybe traumatized me in a way that these beliefs that I had been taught by these people, when it came
Mm-hmm.
down, held the same prejudices that many other people uh, held, and it didn't matter that he was our cousin, our relative, someone's nephew. It just hurt me.
Yeah.
So it was my experience in being with him for 4 days, and then learning that later he died in hospice, where I said, "Oh, I'd like to be the kind of person who can do that for complete strangers."
Mm.
Okay.
Wow.
Slow forward, it took 10 years before I actually did it. So, their method, and this is Zen Hospice Project, now called Caregiving Project. Their method was so, easeful, also real, gentle. but also without avoiding the realities. So I worked in the hospital setting where there, I think, were 25 people dying in one ward. Um, and we got together as a group, so we learned about how to support one another as a team through mindfulness practices, through interdependence, through joyfulness, because also this ward we had happy hour, visiting hour, games. I mean, just because you're dying doesn't mean that you can't enjoy being alive. Wow.
Yeah.
What? That's amazing, right? Um,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
learned a lot. I learned a lot. I learned about, the necessity for, um, interreligious competency or, near competency. I learned, a lot about serving whatever is needed, like carrying people's crap when they needed to crap and carrying that
Yeah.
to the bathroom and cleaning out the bedpan, you know, that I learned. Oh, and one major lesson. There was, a white patient, white guest, a man who said, he did not wanna be visited by any Black people, and I was furious. I remember being furious. And, Eric Poché, who I mentioned before, who was also Black, said to me, so Black person, a Black person, um, "You have no idea why this man is saying what he said. You have no idea about his experience. You have some kinda expectation that somebody's supposed to be different than who they are just because they're dying. Pay attention to things." I'm like, "Wow." Very humbling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's such powerful advice for so many things. Like,
Yes.
yeah, that's really reminding me of something. I was going through one of the hardest times in my life, and it was because of very different reasons, but because of interpersonal things. And I was talking to my father about it, and he advised that I was more, I thought that I was really upset because maybe my actions were leading to affecting other people's lives. And he suggested that I was more concerned with their perception of me than their actual well-being. And just that shift of perception was so powerful for me. And I've carried that with me in so many other experiences. Um, but yeah, just it's so amazing how somebody can put a little bit of turn on your, and how you're perceiving things. And it so radically shifts your perception of everything.
Amazing. I have a little story about that, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, please,
Uh,
please.
okay. So my good friend, Athene, who I, met in college, and we were actually college roommates for a little bit. We were taking a walk when we were 33 years old. So we've been friends for a long time. We were taking a walk, and there was something that I wanted to do, but I said to her, "Well, if I'm gonna do that, I better do it soon because I'm not going to live much longer." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, my father died when he was 35. I, for the longest time, have thought I'm gonna die at 35. So I'm 3, so I gotta get to whatever, this is." And she began to laugh at me, which also infuriated me. Like, how can I'm pouring my heart out, my existential,
Yeah.
right, concerns to you, and you're laughing at me? So, she said, "By your own, um, way of thinking," she said, "Consider this." She said, "Is your mother still alive?" "Yes." "How old is your mother?" "She's 55." "Well, by your extension of your own belief system, is it possible for you to live at least another 20 years?" Boom.
Uh,
And I started living.
yeah.
To your point,
That's
it
great.
doesn't take much sometimes.
Yeah.
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 Wow. Now here I
I
am
love that.
30 years later.
Yeah. And strong.
I hope so. Trying.
Yeah. um, I I love talking about all aspects of things with you, from music and to spirituality and just strong life experience. And I want to just turn it back to music for a second. And if you were to go to a desert island or whatever, and you could only bring 3 albums with you, and I want to I have to set up a precursor for this, that your list could change 10 minutes from now, 3 days from now, just like if you're just if you're about to leave and you got to pick 3 things right now, what
Oh
comes
my
what
gosh.
comes to mind?
No, that's just the worst question. Because when I think about that, I think, well, maybe I should just like go ahead and just die on the spot, because I cannot, and I can't make that decision. However, for purposes of our conversation,
Uh-huh.
I will say, um, there's so many recordings I love. Quincy Jones's album, The Dude, has many of my favorite vocalists on it. So I choose The Dude because then I can listen to several other of my favorites,
Huh?
right?
Yeah.
And you can't go wrong with the Quincy Jones album.
Mm-mm.
Um, I think I would also take, of the many Prince albums. Oh my gosh, choosing one. First, I thought 1999 because, but uh, then I said, no, Sign of the Times, because it's one that I listen to frequently.
Uh-huh.
It's just so full of wisdom, and it's an
Mm.
invitation, right, to get your life together.
Mm.
Um, so full of wisdom. And since my favorite group of all times, so I talk about growing up Christian, but the religious, spiritual soundtrack of my life
Mm.
is from Earth, Wind, and Fire. So of all the albums that they recorded, I would have to take Faces. It's a double
What are
album.
what are some of the songs on Faces? I know songs of Earth, Wind, and Fire, but not any of the albums.
No, see,
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm
you
just
put me on the
curious.
spot. I can't do it. Well,
Okay, that's
Faces
fine.
is one. Faces is one.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Um,
That's the title track.
That's the title track. And it goes well with the album cover, of the manifestation of the varieties of human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also an instrumental piece. The Earth, Wind, and Fire was known for their horn section.
Yeah.
The horns are just amazing on this album. So I would take that one. And then I would say, then I would wrestle you to the ground. Ivan, I cannot just choose 3. Please let me take another Quincy Jones. And then, that one would be Sounds and stuff like that, because there you also have Luther Vandross. You've got Shaka Khan, Valerie Simpson. And then I would say, okay, one more, please, I'm begging you.
Yeah. Yeah. You get a bonus album.
Okay, my bonus album would be the Monterey Jazz Festival, the 40th anniversary, because on that album, you will hear some of the best jazz artists of all times performing live. And people, when they're performing live, I mean, they're really in it.
Yeah, it's so different.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, especially jazz. But I've there's like the whole phenomenon of tiny desk concerts now, and how like when you listen to somebody's tiny desk concert, it's so much more real than the studio albums in some ways, because there's a rawness and spontaneity to it, and you like really get some of their character. It's not overproduced, and I love live recordings. It's my favorite music is live recordings. But it's smart. You were smart to go with the compilation album. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking like, are there any soundtracks that have some of my favorite artists on them and things like that? Because then you get, that compilation vibe of some of your favorite artists.
Okay, 2 more: The Wiz and Chicago. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Oh. So thank you for entertaining that, even though it's something you didn't want to have to pick and choose from. So just turning things back to your spiritual path and journey, it seems that hardship is often at the core of codifying our conviction on the spiritual path. And was this your experience?
Yes. Yeah. It was the bombing of the World Trade Centers,
Mm.
September 2001. I was at an airport in Tucson, Arizona, and the shorter story is that it was happening while I was at the airport. There
Mm.
there was mayhem in the airport and all the airports, right? But, uh,
Yeah.
including the one where I was at, we were watching it happen on a big screen. And, I got home. I was feeling anxious, a kind of anxiety I hadn't felt before, while I was still feeling it. And then the news came out that, the United States was gonna retaliate, but didn't know how,
Mhm.
when, didn't know the culprits. We were going to war against terrorism.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I was just so unsettled.
Yeah.
Turning 40, and that's when my friend gave me, Touching Peace by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Mhm.
And I began, experimenting with the visualizations and the mindfulness practices, and I said, "It's working right now." Like,
Mhm.
"Whoa, this works."
Yeah. Yeah.
Then, of course, Thich Nhat Hanh, was an amazing poet, but
Yeah.
also amazing psychologist in that
Mm.
he knew how to offer these teachings from the East into the West in a way that was, consumable, palatable,
Yeah.
understandable, without hitting people over the head with, Buddhist philosophy,
Mhm.
or at least it was hidden. There are things that I
Yeah.
understood years later that
Yeah.
after reading more of his stuff, that I didn't understand at the beginning, and I think that's probably
Mhm.
a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to call sometimes I call certain ways of presentation of Buddhism, I call it sneaky Dharma. And it's not sneaky in the intention, but it's sneaky in that, it reveals the nature of truth to you
Right,
without the nomenclature, and you
exactly.
might, whatever your access point of it is, it can expand in your mind after that because it's, experiential.
Mhm.
Because the truth is always experiential. And then, we have to make our, uh, whatever our intellectual understanding of it at some point. But yeah, the teachers that can teach in a way that that just rings true, and that we, like you said, like um, it works. The proof is in the pudding. And you can feel that and you can experience that. That's the most powerful stuff. Yeah. And so no matter how advanced we are on the spiritual path or unadvanced, whatever, we're all working with our own shit. We're all working with something. Um, and so where you are now, what do you find yourself working with the most these days in terms of teachings or techniques, or like what's paramount in your practice these days?
Yeah. Um, Maybe 2 things. One would be, as I see the embrace of destructiveness
Hmm.
in US society in particular, the embrace of hatred, threats of violence, um, uh, devaluing truthfulness.
Hmm.
It's been happening for years,
Yeah.
but really amped up right now like it's in full effect.
Hmm.
People really being hurt again. And as I pay attention to the fact that millions of Americans want this, um, my biggest challenge right now, I think, is how to live with the fear I have of people being hurt,
Hmm.
um, sickened, and killed.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I'm working with. How do I
Can
live
you?
life?
Yeah. How, like in light of that, what practices or contemplations are you doing
Uh-huh.
to help yourselves and help those around you in working with all of that?
Right. Um, it's real basic right now. One of the things I'm doing
Yeah.
is just plain old friendliness to strangers.
Uh huh.
when I have an opportunity to, if I'm sitting, next to someone I don't know at a coffee shop,
Mm-hmm.
or what I do frequently, which is taking a walk in my neighborhood, I make an effort to make eye contact with people, with strangers,
Mm-hmm.
because the way we're living right now, I don't think that we're recognizing each other as vulnerable beings. Uh,
Yeah.
and uh, I think we need to be in solidarity with one another. How are you going to be in solidarity with people who you don't talk to, who you're afraid
Mm-hmm.
to even acknowledge? It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
when they come after me,
Uh-huh.
I would like to think that my neighbors who've seen me walk up and down the street will say, "Hey, this person is a person worthy of
Mm-hmm.
support and,
Mm-hmm.
an ally and
Yeah.
solidarity." And my hope is that I will be that for my neighbors who are complete strangers
Mm-hmm.
to me.
Mm-hmm.
So basic friendliness, is
Yeah.
one of the practices. The
Yeah.
other is to remember that, the ways that we are depicted, when no entity can depict the whole of the human being. We're
Mm-hmm.
also super complex. There are people
Mm-hmm.
who can be hate-filled and do heinous acts towards others and be just as sweet and loving and kind to those they choose to be sweet and loving,
Mm-hmm.
kind towards. So I need to remember that no depiction of the human who who we consume, on this
Mm-hmm.
is their whole being. Um,
Yeah.
and then I think lastly is, allowing myself to dwell in the faith that, most people can change. If the conditions are right, they can go from hate to loving and vice versa. So what might be my contribution to, creating the conditions for someone to turn away from hateful and towards compassion, empathy, and love, and that
Mm-hmm.
may mean having a lot of arguments,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Gonna have to have
Yeah.
a lot of arguments, like, one argument that I'd like to have, I don't know how to have it and with whom, is that, Jesus stood for empathy, so that it's not possible to be Christian and
Mm-hmm.
advocate for, empathy as a sin. That's that's not possible, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
willing to argue about that.
It's amazing how compassion can manifest through argument. Like it's not always the just softness. There's compassion through um, conflict even sometimes, and there's so many ways that compassion can manifest when you have the positive intention of like you were saying, um, shifting people's consciousness towards the better, towards empathy, towards understanding, and sometimes an argument's the best way to do that.
Yeah, whether you win it or
Yeah,
lose it, I mean, at least you
yeah,
stood in integrity, right? At
yeah,
least you stood in
yeah,
integrity, and you can know not to count on me, right? To be a partner with you in this
yeah,
kind of, project. I won't do
yeah,
it.
yeah. And it's amazing. I found this in my own experience that sometimes when I'm completely closed to an idea and an argument, when I step away from it and reflect on it later, sometimes I see how wrong I was in that argument. So, like even if it doesn't have the impact that you want it to have when you're having the argument with that person, sometimes, you know, people are shut off in the time of conflict, but then after the fact can open up and hear um, and contemplate at that time.
As they say, when
Yeah,
cooler heads prevail.
yeah, when cooler heads prevail. That's right. Um, and so now I'd love to hear about um, what projects are occupying your time and energies these days. And I know you mentioned the India Arie project, but we'll step aside from that because you can't talk about that. But is there something that you've been working on in recent months or the last year? We'll get to the new book at the end because I want to hear a little bit more about that. But it's like something that you're currently working on, major or minor, that you're excited about and want to share a little bit about?
Yes, yes. Well, I am a pastoral counselor in private
Mm-hmm.
practice, and knowing how much music brings me joy, I am now turning my attention towards learning more about music theory, because I would like to incorporate more music theory and music in my pastoral counseling practice. So even though there's a scholarly element to that, academic element to that, I get to approach that with curiosity and the joyfulness of appreciating music, but the application in healing, and spiritual support. So I gave it a word. I'm calling it Theolyricology.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, thank you. Theolyricology, the practical application, in particular, pop music for spiritual support and spiritual growth. Finding that music, explicating what's underneath the popularity of the music to say, "Oh, there's more to this than what you thought."
Yeah, I love that. And, it's so each tradition in their origins mostly have very musical roots, but I feel like in America, outside of the Christian church and maybe Hare Krishnas, it's like there's not that much of spiritual music or like coming to understanding or awakening through sound and through song, and it's such a powerful tool. I'd love to just, can you share a little bit more about your thinking behind it and why it's inspiring you and why you're starting this program?
I will say that it's just me, okay? Um, I have found as a Buddhist lay leader and as a pastoral counselor and as someone who's engaged in interreligious dialogue across many traditions, um, that many people don't trust spiritual and religious leaders anymore.
Mm.
They
Yeah.
don't they don't trust the institutions
Hmm.
because and this is happening right now, the institutions are being, and have been politicized.
Hmm.
They, used as businesses and profit-making, entities. They have been, used to discriminate against and oppress, people and younger people who have had the benefit of learning from older people, such as myself.
Hmm.
I underscore that this radical way of accepting others and advocating for belonging didn't come out of nowhere. It's come
Hmm.
out of centuries of trying to get to this place. Um, they are leaving these institutions that are holding fast to ancient teachings, especially ancient teachings about how horrible the other is. They're leaving
Mm.
behind.
Yeah.
Yet the wisdom is still here and it is expressed in many ways. I would rather advocate for people finding the wisdom that is in popular culture than not finding it at all. And so that's why I'm focused on this theolyricology. It's there, y'all. It's there.
Yeah.
I tell you what,
That's
there's a
amazing.
yeah, the projects are many. I have
Uh-huh.
I'm on 60, almost 64 now. I cannot work on all the artists I wanna work on, but it's out there. And as I see the millions and millions of people turning towards ignorance, delusion,
Hmm.
hatred,
Mm.
greed, and so on, I wanna do my part to say, "Hey, wait. If you're looking for something that's gonna be nourishing, why don't look here,
Mm.
listen to this."
Mm.
Yeah. That might be more fulfilling to you
Mhm.
than, what you're being drawn into at this moment.
Uh, this is so exciting. Where do people find out more about this, or is it strictly through the university program that you're
Um,
doing it, or will it be on a more public level?
yeah, I think, well, Dearly Beloved, Prince
Uh-huh.
Spirituality, and this thing
Yeah.
called is a manifestation of that. My website,
Hmm.
PamelaAyoYetunde.com, has more
Hmm.
of it. Um, I taught a course called Year of the Black Woman, where I utilized India Arie's music, uh,
Hmm.
as spiritual direction, material. So it's
Mhm.
coming out in different ways.
Okay. So it's taking all these different manifestations with this kind of core inspiration.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Amazing. Great. Um, I'd love to hear about if you've been struck by or interested in, if you can shout out a contemporary author that someone you've read in the last couple years um, that you've particularly loved, fiction, nonfiction, whatever, just something that, like, when you think back about what you've read in the last year or two, just something that really stands out that's a newer work.
Ocean Vuong.
Mm.
Oof. You know, I don't have the ability to articulate how beautiful he he writes, just gorgeous, and just pages and pages of beauty and majesty. I'll leave it there. Just you got to read it to know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. His work is so amazing. And, he's so young and yet is producing so much. It's, I love how much he's pouring out his being and sharing with the world.
Yes. Gorgeous.
Yeah. And then while we're on the topic of books, this wouldn't be a proper podcast by a publisher if we didn't ask you for. I'm into threes right now. So three books that stand out that have been guiding lights. You mentioned the Thich Nhat Hanh book, but other books that have really been guiding lights in your path. And we can, we're leaving spiritual as an open term. We talked about bell hooks and we talked about Thich Nhat Hanh, but there are other, like, just three, and you can have some bonuses if you want, or just stick with two, but just some books that really stand out as those kind of illuminating important works in your life.
Yeah. Well, I also thank you. I also mentioned the Tao Te Ching. Now that book and The Way of the Bodhisattva are two
Mm-hmm.
books that I have given to many people. I'm like, you just
Mm-hmm.
have to have it. You just have to have it. Um, and then I would think of thinking about Audre Lorde's Zami, A New Spelling of My Name, which was given to me when I was living in the Netherlands. So I moved to the Netherlands. I moved out of the United States in part to get to know myself and to experiment with what it meant to be in this body, in this world. And one of my newfound friends said, "You're gay, right?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "I think you are." "You do? Why?" You know, and it's like, You don't think you are?" "I think you are." And so he
Oh.
gave me a copy of Audre Lorde's Zami and said, "I think you should
Mm-hmm.
read this. That might help you get to know yourself better."
Mm-hmm.
Like, "Oh, okay." So then, she became one of my sheroes, and
Wow.
I've written about her
Uh-huh.
and recommend her writings to everyone who is thinking
Yeah.
about, how to be in a time where you are called to speak for truth and
Mm-hmm.
righteousness and justice and solidarity, but how?
Mm-hmm.
And so I recommend Audre Lorde for that. Um,
Okay. So we have the Tao Te Ching, The Way of the Bodhisattva, and Zami.
yes,
That's
and
okay.
I
That's
Woman.
okay. And I
Yeah,
won't. Okay. Yeah.
and then lastly, I will
Mm-hmm.
say, my bonus. Here's my bonus, right?
Yeah.
Uh, the Gospels in the Bible. You gotta read them with the eyes of justice.
Can you say a little more about that?
Yes, I can. I'll just say that one of the most profound stories, and it's one that people kind of know in our culture, or at least they've
Mm-hmm.
gotten bits of it, is about eating the scraps from the master's table.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesus and the disciples, they're looking for their people, and this woman is calling out to Jesus. This Canaanite woman is calling out to Jesus to help heal her child. She has heard about him, heard that he has healing powers. Her child is sick. She's a Canaanite woman, which means she's polytheistic, which
Mm-hmm.
also means that the Canaanite people are subject to brutalization because of their polytheistic ways. And Jesus is monotheistic, right? So he and his
Mm-hmm.
disciples, they're walking. She calls out. Uh, they try to ignore this woman. She's persistent. It's like, I don't want to talk to you. I am here for my people. She keeps reaching out. He's annoyed. He likens her and her people to dogs.
Hmm.
And it's not a story that a lot of people, that part of the story is not one that a lot of people underscore, that Jesus would say something like that to somebody,
Mm-hmm.
right? Dehumanize her in her time of need. Oh my God. Right. And then she responds, you know, what don't the dogs eat the scraps from their master's table?
Mm-hmm.
And then the way I understand it is that he was so shocked that this dog-like being would have this kind of intelligence and
Mm-hmm.
perseverance and determination that he gave her everything that she wanted, the way the story goes. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of read it with the eyes of justice,
Mm-hmm.
eyes of the Beatitudes, turning
Mm-hmm.
things upside down, but not
Mm-hmm.
violence with love.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Um, why don't we wrap things up with you sharing a little bit about your new book, which came out recently? I don't know when this podcast is actually going to come out, but it will still be, semi-recent. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about your latest work
Oh, yeah.
and what a little bit of the story behind why you chose that particular subject and why you poured so much time into it, and maybe a little bit of a story of each book has its own trials and tribulations within it, and just a little bit of story of the creation of the book.
Boy. Okay. How did you know there are always trials and tribulations in the book? Because when it comes out, it's so polished, right? It looks
Yeah.
like a piece of paint. This was the hardest thing for me to write. I'll tell you
Hmm.
up front 3 reasons why. One, um, I had a hip replacement,
Hmm.
the writing of it. I also fell and injured my rotator cuff. So
Wow.
I could only hold my right arm up to a level. So I'm typing after my surgery, I'm typing in a sling, trying to write this book. And my mother was admitted to hospice. She's still
Oh
alive.
my goodness.
She's still alive. But all of this was going on. So talk about trials and tribulations,
Yeah.
right? That was going on when I wrote this book. I wrote it because people said, in part because people said, you need to write a book about that project you did at United, Theology of Prince Project. And I said, no, I don't have to write about that. We did a journal. It's still online. I wrote an article for the journal. I'm good. We're done. Good work. Satisfying, very satisfying, gratifying. I'm done. No, no, you have to write a book about it. Okay. So then I got invited to be in a writing residency at Collegeville Institute, which is in Minnesota. And
Hmm.
so I accepted the invitation and I said, well, shoot, I'm going back to Minnesota. I've got to consider whether there's anything else I need to write about Prince that hasn't been written already
Hmm.
and feels like I need to say it.
Yeah.
So I spent 9 days at Collegeville Institute and came out with this book proposal. And then I asked, well, what would Prince want me to do with this book proposal? I never met Prince. I don't know anything about what Prince would want, but I do know that Prince loved living things. So I said, well, I better submit it to a Minnesota publisher. Otherwise, I will be, dishonoring Prince's love.
Mm.
Uh, so that's what I did. So I submitted it to Broadleaf Books, which is in
Mm.
the Twin Cities. So yeah, that's how this book project came to be, dearly beloved.
Great. Did you ever see Prince live? Did you
No,
ever go to a show? Oh,
I did
okay.
not know.
I'm just, since we're ending on a Prince note, if you have a memory of Prince in your life, or like, what stands out in terms of like a formative experience with listening to Prince, or Prince impacting you. Obviously this is a very powerful figure in your life. You spoke to it previously, and you wrote an entire book about that power. Do you have a memory of a loved experience of listening to Prince?
Two. I'll be
Okay.
brief. Well, first of all, when I first heard his voice, his song, his music on the radio, I was like just mesmerized. In college, the roommate Athene, who I told you about, who challenged me on my existential situation, we were sharing a room at the time. She has a different version of the story, but nevertheless, I was listening to Prince on my turntable. She came in, took the song off, took the album off, and put on the Go-Go's. And I looked at her and I threatened her. I said, if you ever do that again, we're going to have a problem. Don't ever, ever do that again. So that's my story. That's how passionate I was about Prince and being in that moment. But another one, more positive one, also in college, I moved into the dorms. It's my freshman year. My next door neighbor, or either two doors down, I'll call her Debbie. She had a Prince poster on her wall. Scantily clad, barely had on anything. I mean, like a loincloth or something like that. And Debbie was a white evangelical Christian. And I remember trying to square, like, how do these things work together for you? We became very good friends. And so I would say that poster led to a very good friendship. And also an ability to, I guess you could say, cross bridges. College time for crossing cultural bridges. When you live that close to people, complete strangers, getting to know one another, just our appreciation for Prince bonded us.
And that's, it's such a great note to end on, because you're doing all this work around the power of music, and the power that music has to unite people who otherwise might not see eye to eye about anything. It gives us a common bond.
It does. We should talk less and sing with each other more.
Yes,
I do believe that. I believe that. Yeah.
I was talking to somebody recently about being on silent retreat with people, and when you take kind of ordinary speech out of something, and singing's the same thing, because singing, is something you're unified in doing, and so is silence. But you all of a sudden you like most people when you're in community with them, and none of the divisive speech comes up, and you can just kind of appreciate each other and smile. And singing's the same thing. You're in unison with doing something with another individual or a group, and there's so much beauty in that, and so much beauty that comes out of that.
Beautiful, so beautiful. And maybe the group has an intention to harmonize.
Yes.
We want to sound good to each other.
Yes.
And if it's a group that's performing, we want to sound good to each other and for each other. And that's a beautiful thing. Maybe our speech is like a song.
Yeah. Well, thank you for encouraging us to sing and to listen. And thank you so much for having this conversation. This has been, talking with you is always delightful, but this was particularly fun for me and interesting. And I'm sure all the listeners will agree that it's, I love conversation with you, and listening to you tell story and explain things. It's always illuminating and fascinating. So thank you for taking the time, Ayo.
This is what we need to do. And thank you for inviting me into what we need to do with and for each other. Seriously.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe on your favorite platform to be notified about new episodes when they're released.